Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun Bun, and this is our before season 1, episode 8 reaction and review. Do not be fooled by what this show is telling you. This is the primary message that I have coming out of the very end of this episode.
Yeah, did Eli kill his wife? I think the answer is no. This is something that we have already spoken about way earlier on when the show first started. We were kind of like, is this where they're going? Do we like this ending? We don't really like this ending. My very early
Yeah.
tinfoil hat is that he did not kill his wife, but he feels responsible in some sort of way, that either he didn't listen to something she said or didn't take an action that could have helped her, or, if what we see is true, this memory that he has where he's like, oh, I'm going out. She's like, oh, you're going out? Yeah, I'm going to the pool and I'm getting Chinese food and I'm coming home. And oh no, she's dead. That's how he feels that he has killed his wife.
I feel like if we had gotten this reveal at the end of episode 9 or at the start of the finale, then maybe it could be true. But this is the end of episode 8. There's still multiple episodes still to
Mhm.
come here. And
Yeah.
this is going to be where we can have a deep dive into something that I will explain in a moment as the memory is a monster effect. But before we go any further here, hit that subscribe button. We don't want you to miss what we do have coming with before episode 9, the finale down the road. Also, we are still in the Apple TV Plus a palooza with Bad Sisters and Silo that are both very much worth checking out if you're not watching them.
Also, Dexter's going to be coming up very shortly in a week and a half, and we're going to be covering Dexter Original Sin here at the channel. So hit that subscribe button and also follow us over on our Patreon for Dune Prophecy. It is the only place that you can get our exclusive video coverage of that show. We have videos up every week on
Mhm.
that show for the whole season, plus our coverage of The Penguin that just ended. And we are going to be shortly having up a poll on what's going to be coming up next there that our Patreons are going to get to decide what we
Yes.
cover there coming up in the new year. So please join our Patreon. It really helps Matt and I here at the channel.
Thank you guys so much. And I'll pose the question here. Okay, what does memory is a monster mean? This is a tagline that actually was used by Interview with the Vampire earlier this year, and Jess and I both adore that show. And
It's so good. If you are not watching Interview with a Vampire
yeah,
and you are looking for something that's really compelling and heartbreaking and beautiful and scary all at the same time over the holidays, watch this show.
and here I am trying to co-opt this slogan for my own purposes in this video, mostly because there's a phenomenon I've been trying to explain in a few different videos, and I don't want to just keep making references to like things like Final Fantasy VII that maybe 5 people who are watching have played. But like really, what this theory comes down to me is the notion of when you feel like you remember something and it starts to feel clear to you that, okay, this part of my mind is starting to be filled in, but even that still is a lie because you don't really remember the truth still, that there's something in your head that is protecting you from what the actual truth is. And I think that's representative on this show with Eli going into the farmhouse and us not really seeing that much of what's actually in the farmhouse because his brain isn't letting him. But what his brain does allow him to see is a jumble of details, information, experiences. And he comes on the other side of this with this idea of, oh, I killed my wife. I killed Lynn. And that's because his memory is a monster. His memory is haunting him and playing this trick on him where he thinks he understands, but he actually doesn't understand at all.
Yeah, I mean, memories really play tricks on all of us, right? The
Yeah.
only way to kind of really remember something is to write it down as it happened.
Hmm.
And that's really about it because as time goes on, your memory of something, as much as you try to hold on to it, will change over time. You don't remember details as
Hmm.
clearly, or you think something happened that didn't happen, or something that did happen, could have happened, but not exactly how you remember it. And I really think what's going on here is exactly that. I think that he is in therapy himself, and him going into the farmhouse is whoever is his therapist is digging into his like memory palace, which happens to be this farmhouse of horrors of all
Yeah.
these things that he has put away in his mind, of this farmhouse of his mind,
Yeah.
where he's now pulling those things out. I think we all have a memory or a part of our mind that we put all these things that we're embarrassed about or we feel bad about or that maybe we're ashamed of, and we put them all in the same place, and we're just like, we're just not going to pay attention to those so that we can move on with life
Yeah.
and feel a bit better about ourselves and try to do better next time. And I think that those memories are being pulled out of him right now. I know we saw him at the end being carted into the hospital, but I think he's been there the whole time.
He could very well be at this point because the show has done so many things that are just fantastical, whether it be that
Yes.
scene of Eli throwing up all the water that was cartoonish, whether it just sort of be
The worm,
Yeah.
like the farmhouse, like some of this stuff is very just too strange. Things aren't adding up properly.
Yeah, and that's very much intentional on the show's like what the show is trying to give us. And
Yeah.
so this is an experience here where either Eli feels like he's responsible for what happened to Lynn, which is, what you brought up, or it's that Eli may have seen something happen to Lynn. Like I did have this crazy theory earlier on this season that Eli saw somebody kill Lynn and he just doesn't have the full capacity to understand what really happened there. And so he's jumbled up all the memories together, and maybe she died at the pool, and I'm still not completely letting go of that, but there's also still a million other things that I'm kind of struggling to grapple with after these episodes.
Yeah, like there's still the possibility that Noah and Eli are the same person, and that Noah represents what happened to him as a kid. Because there was at one point he was having like this freak out or something that was happening to him, and as he was telling his foster mom, I don't want to die, and she says, you won't, and he's like, but I already did. And what's reflected in his eye is the farmhouse, and the same farmhouse that seems to be like this palace of memories for only Eli. So it's kind of like, well, then there's only a few reasons for this. Is Noah like a reincarnation of Benjamin, and then we've got Eli and Benjamin were friends as kids or something along those lines. But for me, that feels a bit too supernatural for this show. It feels like this is a psychological thriller. So I feel like it's stuff that's in his head. He thinks he's talking to Noah, but really he's just talking to a younger version of himself. Something happened there where either he was clinically dead and they brought him back, or his friend died and he feels responsible for that. And that's what's coming out about Lynn. It's really about a friend that maybe fell through the ice back in the day at this farmhouse. He wasn't able to help them because he was a little kid, and he's holding on to that.
I think where I'm landing right now, and as I have said in multiple videos, this will probably change every week for the rest of the season because this show is driving me crazy. So I'm going to cling slightly to a part of the idea you mentioned here, which is that Eli and Benjamin may have been friends when they were younger. I do not think that that Noah is some reincarnation of Benjamin. I think what we're seeing is a projection on Eli's part that Eli is having these conversations with quote unquote Benjamin through Noah. But what I'm also starting to think is that, okay, we've got multiple scenes now involving water. We've got the pool, we've got the farmhouse, we've got the ice. I think the ice and the farmhouse are one and the same. And then we've got the bathtub. I think what we're seeing with the pool may be an instance where when Eli was very, very young, maybe he almost drowned at the pool, and that sort of has created this dangerous relationship between him and water. And I say this as somebody who I almost drowned when I was like 3 or 4 at a pool. I was just like jumping from higher and higher places because it seemed fun and adventurous, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I've always been like partially uncomfortable with deep water ever since.
I understand. I almost died in the bathtub when I was younger.
Well, okay, yeah. Like this is something that I think happens to people who have these experiences with water, is that you relive them, they manifest themselves in other ways. So I think that is kind of a part of what was going on there. But then I think he's compounded that with something that happened at the farmhouse. And we've seen the photos that he processed through that really not great dude at the photo shop. But I keep kind of going back now to, okay, I think those photographs have to be real. Like, I think that Lynn and Benjamin were probably there, but I think he might have been there and it's just somebody had to take that photo, right? Did they just like put a timer on it and run over?
I think that when he's in the farmhouse and we see him talking to Benjamin, he's like, "Oh, we have to go find our friend."
Yeah.
And we saw him also at the pool being like, I can't get in here. I can't swim." I think this is him remembering when he was a little kid that he was out with his friend on the ice and his friend went through. And even if he could swim, he was not going to be able to jump in and save his friend. It's not only is it super dangerous, but
Mhm.
once he's in the cold water too, your body just kind of stops working and he was going to sink and die too. Even if he could swim, but he can't swim. And I think he's just been holding on to that, something that was not his fault, but he feels like is his fault. So now when Lynn has done this thing that she has done, it's in the water as well, that he's now remembering this and he's connecting everything together as I'm afraid of water. I could have done something in both of these instances, and he actually couldn't have done anything in either of these instances.
This may all just be an instance of there being so many trigger points that ultimately all of it has come rushing back. Like maybe he was starting to feel some type of way when Lynn died and kind of all these memories of water beginning to haunt him. But then there just being something about Noah. And it might just be as simple that Noah reminds him of Benjamin when Benjamin was young, or Noah reminds him of something else that has really awakened everything. And you can say at this point, okay, maybe some of what we're seeing here is literal, or maybe Noah or Eli is in therapy, like you're talking about, and we're seeing it play out that way. I think either way, what we're looking at with this show, by and large, is just a manifestation of Eli's worst fears,
Mhm.
experiences, not understanding the truth, and kind of coming to grips with who he is. I just don't think that he is the killer just because that is so cliche. I just want to think that before as a show that has spent all of this time confusing us and giving us no answers at all is going to then just kind of go to the laziest, easiest explanation for things.
It's always the spouse. No,
Yes.
I don't think that it is. I think that it's a lot more complicated than that. I really think we are in therapy with him and we are getting like some sort of really deep rooted therapy session. That's why the last episode we heard the metronome going the whole time, no matter
Yeah.
where Eli was, that metronome was going. I'm like, okay, so he's got to be the person that's in therapy, right? Like, why is it following him everywhere he goes? And things do seem so fantastical.
Yeah.
He's in this farmhouse, all of a sudden he's with Benjamin alive, like as an adult, like all these things that shouldn't be happening and can't be happening. It has to be he's having either a breakthrough or a brain break, like, and it's falling apart for him. So for me, especially with Noah, because he's been the hardest part of the show
Mhm.
for me to figure out if he's real, then there's not that many explanations. One of them has got to be that this is supernatural and he can see the past, or he's a
Yeah.
reincarnation of Benjamin or something, because there's too much that he knows and he's having too many reactions to things he shouldn't know, including like Lynn, who he would have never met. So there's either a supernatural element to it, or he's completely made up and he's never been there at all this whole time and he's just Eli in his own mind speaking to himself, but he's made it another person. Unless it really is this transference disorder where he's putting things on Noah and Noah doesn't realize what's happening.
I will just take a second here to give a lot of credit to the producers of the show for swinging as hard as they're swinging, because I think the degree of difficulty with
Yeah.
figuring out before, this is probably one of the hardest shows that we have talked about
Yeah.
all year. And it is so theoretical to the point where we're kind of sitting back here in these videos and being like, okay, if this is an extended therapy session, are there any scenes of what we have seen so far that have actually happened? Like, is that time with his family real and everything else is imagined? Are there bits and pieces? But this is a really hard, really big risk that this show is taking, because at this point, I think it's fair to assume that everything from the metronome to the ice to the music choices, I think all of it is intentional and all of it is significant, but they also have to go into these final episodes now with the reality that you're going to make a lot of people mad. Like, there's no ending of this show at this point that I think is going to satisfy everyone, because they have made this so hard and so difficult to figure out that in the event that all of it is imagined or all of it is therapy, they have to find a way to really pay that off so that every scene actually matters.
Oh, if it comes out that this was all in his head, it's all a dream, that sort of thing, I can see a lot of people being upset with that. If for me, I'm fine with it being therapy, or it's all a dream, or it's all in his head, if the delivery is good. And so far for me, the show has been really solid, even though they don't give us very many answers.
Yeah.
I'm one of these people that's here for the journey.
Yeah.
If the ending is so or even bad like Dexter was, I don't care. Like, I'm here for the journey. I've taken, however long to get here. So like, if you don't give me a satisfying ending, yeah, it's frustrating and I don't like it. But if the journey's good, then I'll still like it. If the journey was bad the whole time and I got a bad ending, then we're talking about the curse. But
but what? The curse had some moments.
Oh
It had a
my
terrible
God,
finale, but it
stop.
had some moments.
No, okay. But for this show, if they can really pay it off, like for me, that they
Mhm.
did with Grotesquerie, I know not everybody agrees with that, and that's fine. I felt that they paid that off fairly well. And here, I think that they could. They have taken really big swings, but if it's explained in kind of the same way and feel that they have been doing the whole show, I'll feel all right with that.
I think, to me, the real question that I wonder with a lot of these high concept shows is kind of simply, what is the purpose? Why are you doing things the way in which you're doing them? And you can apply this to almost anything. Like before, yeah, I'm going to be upset if Eli killed Lynn. But at the same time, if the purpose for all of this story structure is to deliver something about that's interesting and compelling, and you're really trying to say something about this character, you can win me gradually on board with this. It's like the reason why The Curse, as you have mentioned, did not work with its terrible finale is because there was no purpose behind anything. It was just like, well, he's going up into space now, and it was just, okay, there's no reason for that. But a show like From, that we're into, that we've watched the entirety of so far, it feels like there's a greater purpose there behind everything that we're seeing that's going to become clear. And I really believe that. I am fully
I'm
into
just
that.
laughing at your curse thing because it's true. Like, the curse was completely grounded in reality, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden somebody's floating off into space. This would be like we're watching before, and then at the end of
Yeah.
it, aliens came down and was like, "We did it!"
Yeah.
Surprise! Like, it would just be what happened here.
Yeah, I'm okay if things are sometimes open to some interpretation, but not everything can be. Like, there has to be a deliberate reason why you're telling the story that you are, and a deliberate reason why you're doing the things that you are. And that's what makes this show so great, but it's also what makes it so confusing, is just because you have thrown so many different things against the wall. Like, I'm honestly excited to see how they're going to pay all this out, because it's going to generate emotional reaction, and that's exactly what we want. Like, I'm rooting for Eli at this point to find peace, to be happy, because I don't think in his heart he killed Lynn. I don't think in his heart he's some terrible person. I could be really, really wrong on that, and I will have to eat crow.
Yeah, I think that after Lynn's death, he had a complete mental health breakdown, and he's been somewhere. He's been at the hospital. He's been somewhere where he's being treated, and he's starting to pull out his memories, childhood, all the way to what actually happened to Lynn, where he thinks that he's killed her, and it might be connected to something that happened in his childhood where maybe his friend did go through the ice and he was too little to be able to do anything. He couldn't swim. He couldn't help. He didn't know what to do. By the time he brought help or got help, it was just too late, and he carried it with him forever. And then he lost Benjamin, and then it, triggered this next thing. And then Lynn died in water, and it's the next thing.
I'm hoping now, entering episode 9, that whether Eli has been in the hospital and been in therapy, or he's just gotten to the hospital, like, no matter what, I'm hoping what we see with the farmhouse in this episode is a breakthrough. And then in episode 9, and this is mostly just a reason to get Judith Light, who I know you are desperate for more of.
Oh my
Like,
God. How is she on this show and she's barely on it? Stop.
This is partially for you, but I also think there's a good chance of this. That episode 9 is going to be just this big two-hander where you have a lot of Eli and Lynn, where you have like the Lynn in his head, starting to actually give him an explanation as to what is going on. I would be really okay with this, and I also want Judith Light to cook.
Yeah, I mean, I love her. I haven't made that any
Yeah.
secret. I was so excited that it was like, oh, it's Billy Crystal, Judith Light. Oh my goodness. But yeah, she's barely been on the show. And I understand it from where the storytelling is, but at the same time, I'm like, why would Judith Light do this show? She's such an iconic star
Yeah.
to barely be on this show. Like, it's not a big enough role for her. She's still working all the time. There's no reason to do this unless she's just like, yeah, I like Billy Crystal and I'm happy to work on this. So why not? Right. But at the same time, it's just like, well, why aren't you on the show more?
I just got to think that they're building towards something. And I think it directly has to involve the two of them because, yeah, you want to work on this show so you can work with Billy Crystal. This is your opportunity to work with Billy Crystal.
Yeah, if it's not episode 9, I do feel like we're going to get more in episode 10 when they're really digging into whatever's going on with him, whether it's memories or he's working things out where I hope she'll get more screen time.
That's where we are, though, coming out of Before Season 1, Episode 8. Of course, let us know your thoughts and theories on this in the comments. I mean, this has been one of the most fun comment sections of any show we've done in a while. Like, we've all got crazy theories. We got to let them out somewhere. This is the place. So hit that subscribe button. Don't miss our other coverage of Silo and Bad Sisters on Apple TV Plus and Dexter Original Sin coming very, very soon. The Showtime, and you can support us further by joining our Patreon. That link is in the description. We are covering Dune Prophecy there exclusively in video form. And we'll see you here next time.